Hi, I'm Laura, a fourth year medical student in Australia, and today we're going to have a chat about being empathetic in medical school interviews. So if you've been fortunate enough to score yourself an interview at medical school, congratulations, well done. It's one of the final hurdles before getting in, and it's a really big deal, so you should be proud of yourself. But also, now it's crunch time. You need to be bringing your A game. It's so important that you give yourself the best opportunity to succeed when you've already come so far. So I'm sure if you've been reading up on medical school interviews or watching other YouTube videos about it, you'll understand that the concept of empathy is something that's massively important. Every person will be telling you, make sure your answers are empathetic. The interviewers are looking for people who can convey empathy. But what is it and how do we do it? I remember how hard it is to find those answers, and so today I'm going to be breaking it down step by step with things that you can actually practice to help you on the day. If you've made it this far, please take a second to subscribe down below so you don't miss any of my new videos. Okay, to start off with, it's really important at the medical school interviews, especially if it's the MMI type situation where you might have a role play or be thrown in to resolve a conflict or anything along those types of lines, that you really immerse yourself in the situation. You need to convince yourself that the scenario on the stimulus that they've given you is real life. This is hands down by far the best way to make sure that anything you say or do comes across as really empathetic. In a way, medical school interviews sort of require some acting skills. Not acting in the sense that you're being fake, but that you're overtly expressing your emotions. The best way to convey empathy is to make sure the examiner can see what you're feeling. If all of this is still not making sense though, that's okay, because I've broken it down and we're going to go into it step by step. The first thing I'd like to talk about is eye contact. It's really important in medical school interviews that you're able to maintain strong eye contact. It's a part of human nature to trust someone more when they look you in the eyes. So if that's not something that you're usually comfortable with or do very often, it's really important to start practicing. Likewise, if your interviews are taking place over Zoom in these crazy COVID times, make sure instead of staring at the picture of yourself, you're looking directly into the camera to mimic eye contact in real life. In addition to strong eye contact, you're going to want to include hand gestures as well. Now, I probably haven't set this up very well because you can't really see my hands, but you'll have to take my word for it in that I am gesturing naturally with my hands. If I have a point to make, I'll use a hand gesture to accompany that, and it's a really easy way to demonstrate that you're engaged with every question and with everything that you're saying. So, eye contact, hand gestures. What else? It's also really important to use pauses to enhance emotion. Look, the chances are you will be asked a question that's either really difficult or that you're not quite prepared for. And that's okay, because there's actually ways that we can turn that to our advantage. By pausing and taking a breath before you start to answer a question, you'll outwardly appear as if you're really contemplating what you're about to say. Taking 3, 4, 5 seconds before you start to speak can feel like a really long time to you, but in the context of a natural conversation, it still fits the flow, and it's a lot better than starting with, so, you catch my drift? So just stop. Say you're asked a question like, would you report a peer who confided in you that they cheated for a test? Spoiler alert, in medical interviews the answer is always yes, but it's a hard situation. You don't want to betray your friend, but you know that it's the right thing to do. So by taking a moment and just, look, that's a really difficult situation to be in. Obviously, it's really important to recognise that my friend trusts me enough to confide in me, but cheating impairs a test's validity and it's not fair to the other students. So yes, I would report them to the academic faculty. Take a pause. Verbally acknowledge tough questions with, wow, that's a really difficult situation, or okay, that's tough. Because that shows that you're human. It shows that you're thinking about the feelings associated with the situation and not just the words you use to respond. I would also go so far as to recommend using positive connotations wherever you can in your medical school interviews. You want to be the glass half full person, not the glass half empty. Say you're asked a question on your personal weaknesses. instead of saying, I find I'm really lacking in the area of time management, I would say, an area I think I could improve upon would be my time management skills. You're literally saying the same thing, just in a slightly different way, which paints you in a slightly better light. Along these same lines, I would also be really mindful of the way that you phrase things. For example, in the medical world, we say people with disabilities rather than disabled people. We say people who inject drugs or intravenous drug users rather than drug addicts or junkies or any of those other derogatory terms. It's really important to showcase that you're accepting and inclusive because they're really big constituents of empathy. Another thing I'd like to touch on is your tone of voice. It's really important that you practice so you can establish a good rate and volume and rhythm. I'd also really recommend adopting a more calming tone in roleplay situations because they're usually based on conflict de-escalation or dealing with someone who's really upset. So in those situations, it's okay to dial it back a little bit. Come in slightly closer, lean forward, have that empathetic body language and accompany that with a soft, calming tone of voice. You'll be reeling in those examiners before you even start to speak. On that note as well, it's really important to use facial expressions. When we get nervous, our facial expressions are one of the first things to go. We tend to get quite restricted, pretty deadpan, which isn't exactly ideal if you're trying to convince someone that you're really caring and empathetic. So just be conscious of that. If you're saying something happy or speaking about something that you're really proud of, smile. Raise your eyebrows, open up that body language even more. And if you're answering a question on an ethical dilemma or consoling someone who's upset, then furrow your brow and bring it in a little bit. Yes, the outcomes of the interviews are determined by what you say, but they're also influenced by how you say them. And on that note, my final piece of advice for being empathetic in medical school interviews is just be yourself. So cliche and overdone, I'm well aware, but if you're concentrating too hard on trying to do all of these different things, you'll end up portraying an entirely different person to who you are. And that's who the medical school wants. They want you. Because at the end of the day, they can train you to be a better communicator. That's not what it's necessarily about. So be authentic, be yourself, and that in itself will give you enough confidence to succeed in your interview. I hope you found all of these tips useful, and I really hope they help you in your interviews. If you haven't already, go and check out my video on preparing for medical school interviews because there's definitely some hidden gems in there as well. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below or send me a message on Instagram. Give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you next time. Bye!